3 of my 4 grandparents were immigrants. 2 were from Germany, and 1 from the part of Austria-Hungary that would become Poland. But get this, when these home movies were taken in the 1950s, the only one of my grandparents who was not a U.S. citizen was my mother's mother, who had been born and raised on a homestead in western Nebraska. Here's what happened. She'd gone to work at the Wheat Growers Hotel in the town of Kimball, and that's where she met my Polish grandfather, who had not yet become a U.S. citizen, although he had served in the U.S. Army in World War I. They got married in 1919 in the Kimball County Courthouse. That's when, under a 1907 law, the Expatriation Act, my American grandmother lost her U.S. citizenship. The United States now considered both of them citizens of Poland, although I'm not sure Poland thought so. But here's the twist. If he had been the American and she the immigrant, they'd both be American citizens.
There's a lot of American law which I can describe, which gave the husband a great deal of power in the household.
That's historian and legal scholar Linda Kerger.
So their thinking is, if an American-born woman marries a foreign-born man, he is in charge of the household. And there should be what they called marital unity. And so marital unity meant a foreign woman marries an American man, she becomes an American woman marries a foreign man, she becomes French or German or whatever.
The Expatriation Act was passed at a time of growing immigration and growing concern about immigrants. There were those who felt that immigrant women were docile and American husbands would make them good citizens. But American women marrying foreigners seemed to some unpatriotic. But one issue that didn't have to do with Ellis Island that got a lot of folks riled up was Americans living overseas. And especially galling was sometimes impoverished European aristocrats marrying wealthy American heiresses and taking them and their money back home.
Was no American good enough for this heiress? This is horrible. And the upshot of that is that Congress conceptualizes this law of 1907, which writes into law that practice, that if an American woman marries a foreign man, she loses her citizenship.
But my grandmother was hardly a wealthy socialite or world traveler, which was a good thing because she now couldn't get a passport anyway. And then when the 19th Amendment took effect in 1920, giving women the right to vote, it did not apply to all those American women like her who'd married foreigners and were no longer U.S. citizens. And in a city like St. Louis, filled with immigrants from Italy, Poland, Germany, Ireland, there must have been non-citizen immigrant men marrying native-born St. Louis women. There were still expatriation stories on the society pages, but little, if any, coverage of how all of this was affecting, say, American-born shopgirls and factory workers. The expatriation law was challenged. In California, where women already had the right to vote, Ethel Mackenzie, a well-to-do San Francisco woman married to a British subject, was turned away from the polls. She took her case to the U.S. Supreme Court, which upheld the law, saying the Expatriation Act did not take citizenship away. Women marrying non-citizens were voluntarily giving it up. And once again, the story was focused on the impact on wealthy and prominent women. But that wasn't the end of it. Equal citizenship was part of the women's rights movement, but it was overshadowed by the fight for the right to vote. And when they got that under the 19th Amendment,
members of Congress all are shaking in their boots because they know how to run for re-election with a male constituency. And now suddenly their constituency has been doubled and they have no idea what these women are going to do.
So Congress did something, almost immediately taking up the citizenship issue and undoing the 1907 law by passing in 1922 the Cable Act, named for the Ohio congressman who sponsored it.
And it provides that when an American-born woman marries a foreign man, she can still keep her citizenship.
But it's not retroactive, and
But that's the problem. The Cable Act is not retroactive.
what I also realized was my mother was born in 1921. She was only a citizen because she's native born, but neither of her parents were citizens at the time.
And that brings birthright citizenship right home to the core of your family.
So those like my grandmother did not get their U.S. citizenship restored even after their husbands became citizens. They could go through a lengthy naturalization process, which over the years would become easier and easier. And finally, in 1940, all my grandmother had to do was go to a courthouse, raise her hand, take the oath of allegiance, and boom, once again, an American. Wouldn't do it. Not because it was inconvenient, but out of principle. She told my mother her family had been in this country a lot longer than anybody who was going to swear her in. I don't know if she ever voted or if she tried, if anyone would have stopped her. All I know is she died stateless, a woman without a country. Stubborn, independent, American through and through. And little more than a footnote in this country's ongoing story of immigrants and citizenship, given and taken. For Living St. Louis, I'm Jim Kirchherr.